Yo, what's going on, guys, and welcome back to another Mecha BREAK video. Today in this video we are going to be on episode 4 on our Counter Striker series. Today we're going to be looking at how to counter Hurricane specifically. Now, we have already done Falcon, Welkin, and also Inferno. Now we are looking at Hurricane. So if you are new to the channel, go ahead and hit the like, subscribe button right now. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. But what we've been doing lately is taking the striker, not only learning the striker, but also trying to figure out who are the best matchups against this specific striker, specifically more in a 1v1 scenario. So we're going to be doing today in this video, we're going to be looking at the general kit of the featured striker. So we're going to look at Hurricane's kit a little bit, and then we're going to be going over my ranking on specifically of what mechs are good and what mechs are the best, and then what mechs might not be the best against a Hurricane player. I want to give a special shout out to Demon and Lost Command, who were able to help me out with some of the testing specifically on this. So you're going to start seeing some B-rolls, and they were able to help us out. Now we are planning to do another lab testing specifically for another striker. The next striker on the chopping block for us to learn and how to counter them will be Tricera. So if you're interested in seeing Tricera counters, come by the stream on Saturday. We will be looking at doing a lab testing everything when it comes to this. Now, while we were testing Hurricane, there was a few things that we actually learned that one could be a bug, and two can really work in your favor if you are going against a Hurricane player and you happen to be a brawler. So stay tuned to that. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. Alright, so now let's take a look at Hurricane's weapons and also their abilities. So we're going to go ahead and look at that. So first one is the Energy Blaster. So this has 2 firing rates. You can either shoot it right away, or you can hold on to it. And now this is one of the cool things is, again, you can hold on to it and it doesn't take away from your energy until you actually fire it. So if you don't fire it at all, it doesn't go against you right away. But you can hold on to this as you're moving around, and then when you're done, it is fully charged. You let it go. It does a DOT. So it's a lingering DOT, which is really good for objective style stuff. It also is really good to not only keep people off the objective, but really good for those tanks or any players who like to stay in one specific spot. This would be a way to use that specifically. Now, when it comes to the weapons, I don't always hold it all the time. I think it's always a good idea to always keep one fully charged when you're moving around, and then use it when you need to. Now, if you in a scenario, if you are fighting another mech, I don't recommend always holding it because you can easily miss. You're going to want to spam it instead. So if I'm fighting any other mech, they catch my attention, I do this, and now I'm going to be spamming this instead of trying to hold it instead. That's just the way I've been using Hurricane, and I just feel like that's the best way. You have to know what scenario you're going to get yourself into to figure out which mode you're going to be using, the charge up or the spam of the ability. All right, so looking at the next thing is the decoy drone. Now you have 2 of these. Okay, so that is my right click. All right, boom, here's 1 and 2. Now what's really good about recently is when a melee target decides to go after it, they would not only destroy it, but leave an EMP blast, which then stuns them for about 2 seconds solid, and it's a hard counter, so they can't move out of this. All the targeting will now be specifically towards that, but if you walk away a little bit away from it, you would actually draw the attention back onto you versus the actual decoy drone. Now you could have 2 out for a set duration time, as you saw there, but you can still always constantly have 2. So you can go ahead and spam your 2 and then be able to charge up, and by the time you charge up to get both of them, you are good to then use them if you need to. Now the next one is your first ability, your Aux1, your defense field drone. Now you do have 3 of these. Now keep in mind that all these are drones, so there are certain things that can stop drones, so you just got to keep that in mind. But when it comes to this specifically, this is going to be your best way to do some damage over time while the people are staying in a certain area. Now the radius is kind of a short area, but if they're in that radius, they're going to be getting some damage over time when it comes to that beam specifically. But on top of that, this is also a really good way to counter a lot of the missiles coming at you. So like for instance, Falcon's missiles, this will be a great way to help you counter those specific missiles. So having that out is also a great way. And the last ability is your focus emitter. Now, just like Inferno, if you haven't seen Inferno, they have very similar abilities here. This is your focus emitter. It has one as well, but this one is a little bit more stronger, and you only have 4 beams. Now, you have to keep in mind when you're using this that if you happen to cross the beams when you're really close, as the beam crosses, if it hits that target, even though it can only lock up to 1 target, if that other beam crosses, it can actually do more damage to it because that beam is also crossing to it. So it's really good to use this. You can use this really far range and get a good lock onto a target. But at the same time, if you're really close to a target, you can actually do a lot of melting of any mech because of that crossing of beams. If you're right on them, all the beams will be crossing against them so that you can easily melt them. So for some bigger targets, this can be really good for you. All right, so now we're going to be looking at the mechs that are in the game currently as of this video being uploaded, which is August, the end of August, August 26th. So as this video is being updated, there will be more strikers that will be coming out, so we will have to do more. But right now, as of this video, all the strikers we tested to see which ones, how they react to them, their survivability, and their damage overall. So we will be ranking them off of survivability and also damage. So if they can survive and do a lot of damage, they're going to be more of an S and A tier. But if they can only survive but they can't do enough damage, they'd be more of like a low A, maybe a B, depending on how bad the situation is, or vice versa. If they can do a lot of damage but they can't survive, then it will be that way as well. So without further ado, let's get into our first striker. All right, the first striker we're going to be looking at is Pinaka. Now, Pinaka, I think, is a off the rank. I'm going to say is a tier when it comes to Hurricane. Now, the reason why I put that is Pinaka is really great at surviving. The amount of health that it can regen, on top of that, the shield protection that it gets, and the wall to divide someone between between the Pinaka player and the person attacking Pinaka. Because they can do all of that, that plays a factor into it. If you try to destroy the wall takes up a lot of damage. It can absorb a lot of damage. So you're not really trying to shoot the wall. You're trying to go around the wall. But when it comes to Pinaka, I find it that Pinaka is really strong. If a Hurricane player is really close to a Pinaka, Pinaka damage, not only from the wall falling down, we tested that out. That was doing around like 30%, give or take. It was a good chunk of damage that was done to myself when Pinaka put that wall up. So the damage that the wall can do specifically. On top of that, Pinaka's blasters that it can do, the guns that it can do up close, if it gets all 12 blast hits, you can really melt a lot of targets. And I find Pinaka as a really strong mech when it's up close in person. Can there be times where you can have the advantage? Of course, but survivability, Pinaka definitely can survive. What hurts Pinaka when you are going against a Hurricane player, specifically if you are, is just how far you are from that Hurricane player. A Hurricane player can shoot that main weapon really far. On top of that, the third beam can go really far as well, the focus emitter. And then on top of that, if they have drones that can do some damage, that also plays a factor into it. Now, on top of that, Pinaka has shields, so does Hurricane. So the amount of shields that that Hurricane keep putting out, the decoy drone and the big drone overall, I think Pinaka can survive. When you are really up close in person, Pinaka can do some solid damage, and that is why I put it more in the A tier. But if you're really far away, you're really not going to be trying to go try to fight a Hurricane far. You're going to be moving around, either going back to your teammates and healing them, or finding another way to attack that Hurricane player that's bothering you if there are no one helping you fight that Hurricane player. But you're going to try to close that gap if you need to. You're not going to always be focusing on be fighting really far away. So that is why I specifically put Pinaka as an A tier. I think Pinaka is really solid character. I think the damage that Pinaka can do, a lot of people sleep on that damage. The closer that that halo is on Pinaka or is on the enemy's team, that they use it on their allies, that they're doing damage to you, can be crazy insane if they're that close in person. So that also plays a factor into how the ranking I put for Pinaka. All right, now the next mech we're going to be looking at is Luminae. Now, Luminae, I have it at rank right now at a B. Now, the reason why I have Luminae rank as a B is while we were testing, we noticed a couple things. One, the decoy drone specifically is very key into Hurricane's kit. Now, you're always going to have one up, or maybe you have both of them up, depending on what kind of Hurricane player it is. But the lock-on specifically takes away the DOT, and it'll be focusing more on the actual decoy drone versus Hurricane themselves. So when it comes to damage specifically from a Luminae, you won't be really doing a lot of damage, because if they put a decoy drone out, they're going to unfortunately putting it on the decoy drone versus actually putting on the Hurricane, just because the way is locked on. Now, you can have two of them, so if they have two drones, you have two drones that could be on top of each of them from the DOT that Luminae can do. So the damage can be hit or miss when it comes to it. So it's very low, the damage, unfortunately, depending on how the Luminae and the Hurricane player has set themselves up. Yes, you can have a scenario where a Luminae is going to an objective and they might be a Hurricane player there waiting for it. So now when it comes to that scenario, it's all about survivability, bothering that person, trying to survive. And yes, I think Luminae is a really great survivor. It can move around, it can zip around, and it does a really good job at zipping around. The wings are amazing. I find that that is what keeps Luminae at higher rank, specifically at a B's, because the way you're able to escape and get out of a situation and how fast you are, the way you can get your energy back up, is why I have it a little bit higher. But the damage overall is kind of lackluster due to the decoy drones being out there. That takes away from Luminae's damage. Now, you do have a AoE field that you can do, the negative chaos field to it, but you have to be up close in person. And I would say if you're that up close in person, they can easily charge up their beam and then attack you a little bit more closer. And on top of that, their beam from their focus emitter from their third ability can do a lot of damage to a Luminae, and the fact that Luminae is a light armor unit, that also plays a factor in how much damage you can take from that. So I won't recommend that specifically that scenario, but I have it Luminae on a Hurricane 1v1 specifically is a B tier due to those due to the damage that Luminae can do is not really there, unfortunately. If they have at least one decoy drone, your drones are going to be focusing on that versus a Hurricane player. So that would be something to keep in mind when it comes to a Luminae versus a Hurricane. Again, I ranked it at B. All right, now the next mech we're going to be looking at is the last support currently right now, as making this video, is Serenith. Now, Serenith is a really great pick, and I feel like a lot of people have slept on Serenith. I was one that I felt like Serenith was a sleeper pick. It all depends on what mechs are being used on the other side of the team, the enemy team, and I find that the value of Serenith has gotten a lot more play and a lot more stronger, and I just feel like Serenith is a really good mech now, and I don't think people are sleeping on Serenith. I think now people understand that Serenith is a powerhouse specifically, and this just proves the point. I think when it comes to Hurricane versus Serenith, Hurricane just doesn't do as great when it comes to a Serenith player. A couple things to keep in mind if you are a Serenith player going against a Hurricane. If they have their decoy drone out, you cannot grapple, unfortunately, so keep that in mind. It won't let you even try to grapple if the decoy drone is near that target, so you won't be able to do that stun, that funny team switching thing, so you won't be able to do that. But the damage that you can do with Serenith is pretty insane. The orbital can easily destroy the decoy drone. On top of that, also a charged up beam can also one charge up beam plus a tap of a light beam can easily destroy the decoy drone. And again, that orbital, if you see that giant shield of a Hurricane player, you know, if you have an orbital already being charged and you're looking for something to do, use it on that, because by doing that, that would take away from their shield and it would take some time for them to replenish that. So that's one less thing that they're able to do as a Hurricane player. And if you take away those two things, taking away and getting rid of their shields is pretty important. That's kind of what they live off of. And the other stuff they have is their regular drones that could do some damage. But what's really great about Serenith is they have that way to be immune to being locked on top of that. So if you are fighting a Hurricane player as a Serenith player really close to Hurricane, you'll be able to not worry about being locked on, which is really great. So if their drones are on you and they activate their focus emitter, you can activate your ability to not be locked on, and they have a tougher time. Sure, if they have a charged up beam or regular weapon they use to quickly tap on it, sure, they can potentially hit you, but that's when you're going to be looking around, zigzagging around, or trying to fly a little bit just to get that off of you and waste their abilities. And I find that the damage specifically that Serenith can do is extremely high. I think overall survivability, I think, is pretty decent. If you are not in the right position, can a Hurricane player do some solid damage? Of course, they can do some solid damage. You really don't have a lot of ways to avoid taking damage like other mechs specifically. But overall, if you can land that team switching thing, that helps you out. And the fact that you cannot be locked on, that is your way to survive technically. And I feel like overall, I think Serenith is an A+. I think he's really up there. I think this mech is super solid. Again, when it comes to Serenith versus other mechs specifically, it might vary depending on what you're going against, but like heavy defenders are going to be a really easy target for Serenith players to go after. So again, when it comes to the scenario between a Hurricane and a Serenith, I think a lot of times you're going to see a Serenith player win a Hurricane battle. Depends on the pilot still, so keep that in mind. And whatever I say still depends on the pilot. You might be a cracked out Hurricane player that says, yo, I beat Serenith players all the time, and that's great. But this is just talking about basic people. If anyone just picked up the game and you had these two people randomly fighting each other, boom, who's going to really win in this fight? I think overall, if you know your kits, you're going to be a little bit better situation just because you're able to destroy Hurricane shields and get rid of their decoy drones, so you're able to do damage. And that takes away half of their kit, which is right there alone. So that is just my take on Serenith being an A+ mech. All right, now we're going to be looking at Stellaris. All right, Stellaris is my favorite. It has been always my favorite, but since we've been testing out other mechs, I like all the mechs. I think they're really cool. I think they have their own niche to things and their own play style, which I do like. And I like to try other new mechs out. Stellaris is still one of my favorites overall. Now, when it comes to Stellaris, as a Stellaris player, I was concerned that stun would actually be super overpowered. Now, it is pretty strong. You can't get out of it. As a Stellaris player, it might suck when you get stunned. Your light mech easily can pretty much take a lot of damage in those 2 seconds. So when it comes to Stellaris specifically against Hurricane, I put Stellaris at a B. At a B specifically. I was looking at my notes. I was like, is it B+? No, it's more of a B. The reason why it's more of a B is when you're up close in person, you're most likely going to lose that fight. Unfortunately, most likely. I'm not saying you aren't, but you are most likely going to lose that fight. A lot of times, if the Hurricane player has their stuff out already, you're kind of just going into the lion's den in a sense. You have everything out there that you're going to get stunned. They're going to go after you and they're going to finish you off. I don't think you will like that, but can you win that fight? There is a chance. And now I will tell you guys a tip in a second, specifically about brawlers as we continue to go with the other brawlers as well. But what is really nice about Stellaris is you can use your right click, and the right click does really solid damage. Now keep in mind, yes, you might not be able to destroy the decoy drone right away. It would take 3 slashes for you to do it, but keep in mind that these slashes can actually go through the decoy drone. So if a Hurricane player is hiding behind it, what you can do is actually use your slash to actually not only attack the decoy drone, but also attack the Hurricane player as well. So the slash is really good. It goes through their big bubble. It goes through their decoy drone. So if they are near there and they're behind it, they can easily take damage from that. So from range is really solid. You also have your third ability that can also help you out, do some damage from range. And I just feel like range might be the better way for a general Stellaris player to handle a Hurricane player specifically. Just because you can hit from range with those slashes can really annoy a Hurricane player. Yes, like I said, you can't do enough damage that way, but you're going to slowly chip at them, and if they don't have a healer, you're going to be able to kill them. Now, one thing to keep in mind, all brawlers, okay? We're talking about Stellaris, we're talking about Panther, Welkin, and also Alysnes, okay? There is something Now, we were testing this out, okay? If a Hurricane player is near their decoy drone, you're going to be focused on that decoy drone. But if you jump up and look down for a split second, you're going to be focused on the actual Hurricane player. So there is a split second that as you jump up, you look down, you can actually do a stun strike right to that player versus actually doing it with the actual decoy drone. And you won't get stunned by that decoy drone. Now, if you hit it, of course you will. But if you are attacking that specific spot, if you jump up and strike down, you'll be able to actually see for a split second as you jump up that you're targeting them. Now, we were able to test this out, and we found out while we were testing Panther right after Stellaris, and I said, no way. And this was every single mech that can be a brawler. That is your way to get around a Hurricane player specifically. So if they're really that close, you could use that to your advantage to jump up, look at them, and then strike down. You have a split second to go ahead and do that. Now, is that intended? I don't know. I think it might be intended. It might not. I don't know. It's supposed to be pulling away, but hey, this is a little tidbit when it comes to a Hurricane player. If you happen to be that close, use that method to actually do a lot of damage and really pull them away from their decoy drone. When they realize that you got around their decoy drone, they might not want to be near their decoy drone, which then exposes them even further and then allows you to attack them more. Now, yes, they can parry you with their right shield when they time it just right, that those 2 seconds that they put their main shield up. But I just want to let you guys know, all melees, you can test it out. I should have a B-roll of it. You can go ahead and do that. Now, when it comes to Stellaris specifically, I put more of a B. You can survive a Hurricane player because you have camo, but if you don't do that trick we talked about and you're going around, a Hurricane player can, as you trying to zip around, can do a lot of damage to you. And because you're light mech, you can actually die pretty quickly. The camo is what saves you specifically in this scenario. So that's something to keep in mind when it comes to that. What also helps you is Hurricane's drones that attack you have like a 2-second or a 1-second delay. So if you're being attacked and you activate your camo, you're going to see a second delay where you're able to take no damage because it has to recharge, and you're able to jet away from that, and you'll be able to use your survivability by using your camo and surviving that attack specifically. But that's just my personal take. Like I said, I personally like Stellaris, and I have him as a B because a general person is going to probably see, oh, I can't fight this person up close. I'm going to have to go range specifically. And when it comes to range, your range damage isn't that great. It's okay. It does go through your HP, which is really nice, like I said. So that's something to keep in mind when it comes to a Stellaris player. So now let's move on to the next mech. All right, now we're looking at Panther as our next striker. Now, as we talked about already, if you skip past everything, there is a little hiccup. It might be a hiccup. It could be intended for all the brawlers that when you are going against a Hurricane player specifically, if they are near their decoy drone, if you jump and then look down for 1 split second, you are able to target them versus their decoy drone. And we were able to test this out, and it does work. So any brawler specifically, we were able to test it specifically with Panther. I just want to make sure I mention it with Stellaris. Now, when it comes to Panther itself, Panther replenishment of the second ability is super duper strong when it comes to what it can do between the complex shield and its normal fluid armor. You're able to replenish it. When it comes to a Hurricane player attacking a Panther and they're going on a 1v1 scenario, in this specific scenario, due to that jumping mechanism that you can do and target them for 1 split second, we put Panther at a lot higher. We have it as A tier. I see it was B+, but we're going to put it in the A tier specifically due to that little hiccup where you can jump up and target them. But on top of that, the survivability of a Panther, because everything that Hurricane does is going to be focusing on their fluid armor and their normal shields, which you can replenish your complex shields because of your second ability, can easily make it where you can survive a lot of attacks specifically from a Hurricane player. And the damage that a Panther can do is super duper solid if they are able to land those hits. Like I said, you're always going to most likely, as a Panther player, you're going to always have 1 javelin charge at all times while you're traversing and moving around. always have one javelin fully charged to the 2-bar, and then you're going to use your melee mode to jump slam and then pin them down, and then you're going to just slowly take away. But like I said, because you can replenish your shields and your energy due to your second ability, I think I put Panther in a lot higher situation, which is crazy because, again, Hurricane is supposed to be able to counter these mechs, but I feel that certain mechs can deal with those a little bit better, and I find Panther is a lot better at dealing with a Hurricane player, in my personal opinion, which is why, again, I put it at a higher tier, which is I have it at A. All right, now looking at the next striker, we have Welkin. Now, Welkin specifically, I have Welkin at a B+, I believe. Let me just see my notes. I believe I have Welkin at a B+. I actually have Welkin as a B+ or an A. Now, the reason why I have it as an A specifically, or more towards the A, is because if you understand Welkin's ability, the second ability jams all drones, which unfortunately for Hurricane, everything it does is drones, so you're able to jam it out. So in that scenario, I find that a Hurricane versus a Welkin player can easily get rid of a lot of the drones by using the jammer. It has 2 jammers, so it can get rid of a lot of the drones if you are putting them out there. On top of that, you also have your third ability that completely nullifies all energy damage. Now, it doesn't say every single energy damage, but specifically from Hurricane. Now, if a sniper has a bullet and it shoots a Welkin specifically, yes, even though it's energy weapon, it still would take a lot less. Now, we give or take, it's around 60% less damage it would take, give or take. But it will still take damage depending on what mech it is. But specifically, a Hurricane player versus a Welkin, you pretty much do no damage when Welkin has the third ability up. So overall, you're going to be able to survive. You're going to be able to have that up. Now, what makes it a little bit tough is when Welkin has the battle axe, it swings a lot specifically, and even if you do spin, if they have their decoy drone out and you haven't stopped it, you're going to be stunned by it, so that plays a factor into it. So if you are a Welkin player who likes to spin around a lot and have those periodic spin stops because of the way the game is when it comes to Welkin, then you have a chance to be stopped for a second, and then the Hurricane player can escape or try to redirect and try to figure out something else to attack you with. But I feel like Welkin is a really solid mech. If you can watch out for the swings as you do your swings, because the decoy drone, keep in mind, like we talked about, like the other brawlers, if you do that jump slam, that can help you in those scenarios. If you're really close, that also helps you. Your Howitzer also helps you as well. So I find that Welkin is definitely more of an A tier specifically. So I know I said B+ or A. I find it more as an A because you can survive. You can negate most of Hurricane's damage. And on top of that, the damage you do to it is actually super solid. So I have Welkin as an A when it comes to it. Like I said, because Hurricane is supposed to technically stop these players, but they're just really strong. And if you're able to play around it and you're able to do that jump slam, that also helps you out that as well. And I just find that Welkin just completely negates all the damage that Hurricane can do while it has a third ability up, which is why I have it at A. So let's look into our next mech. All right, now our next mech we're looking at is Tricera. Now, depending on the specific player, if you are a Tricera that like to sit in one spot, you're going to be a lower rank specifically. But if you are a really good Tricera that actually knows how to move around and not always stay in fortress mode, then you're going to be a really solid mech. Now, even though the Hurricane is supposed to be able to do enough damage to really, chip down at a Tricera and keep them off of points, but that's pretty much what they do. They kind of defend people off and annoy them. Tricera, though, the amount of damage you can do with all your Gatling guns, the Howitzers, you can actually do an insane amount of damage, and you can actually burn through Hurricane's shields and decoy drones. At a certain point, they won't be able to have everything up at the exact same time, and then that's when you finish them off, and you can do a lot of damage. Again, we test this out, a lot of 1v1s, and just see how we can, if we both stood still, if we're both moving around, and we found that Tricera is still super strong. Is not very mobile as other mechs, obviously, because they're ultra defenders. But in this scenario, Tricera is just really super solid. The damage that it can do can be really good. If you are mobile, it helps you out a little bit more better. If you happen to stay still, a Hurricane player can kind of steamroll over you. So keep that in mind. So if you are just a general player who don't know how to play Tricera, you go against a Hurricane, it may be a B specifically, but I find Tricera, if it's done correctly by a certain mech player, you can see this be more of an A, and I definitely see arguments for an A because the amount of damage you can do, you can just pretty much get rid of all their shields and they won't have enough to be able to replenish, and then they're out in the open. Now when it comes to damage wise, you're taking in, because you have your complex shield, you have your normal fluid armor, you have your HP, you balancing all three, plus you have your healing drones, just makes you really tough to destroy. So when it comes to it, I find a lot of Tricera players who could win this battle a lot more often than a Hurricane player. So that's just something to keep in mind when it comes to that. Tricera for me, depending on the mech player, but I find it more of an A specifically. All right, now looking at our next mech is Stego. Now we've already put Tricera at an A. Now I personally find that Stego is more of an A- if we put Tricera at an A, or a B+, depending on the player altogether. I find that Stego, the amount of damage that Stego can do when it comes to all the decoy drones, all the shields that that Hurricane player has, you're able to do a lot of damage when it comes to it. And you have a front shield, and if they're attacking you, you have that haze to help take away where they can't lock onto you. It makes it a little bit tough. Sure, can they randomly throw a full charge of weapon to you if they can find you? Sure. I find that, can you survive a general battle? I feel like because of the shield you have, plus on top of that, because of the haze that helps you out, you can survive a battle pretty easily, I find, when it comes to a Hurricane specifically. And the amount of damage that a Stego can do, I think, can be a lot stronger than a Hurricane player can outdo a Stego. So that's why I have Stego a lot higher, because the amount of damage that it can do versus a Hurricane player, and it can survive. So I have it just below a Tricera. Again, I'll have it more of an A- plus with a B+, but you are not trying to stay in one spot. If you do stay in one spot, the value definitely goes more lower for you guys. You don't want to stay in one spot now that they move and they change Tricera and Stego a little bit. You want to be a little bit more mobile. You don't want to stay in one spot, because then they can easily attack you and, you know, kind of melt you. So you want to make sure you are mobile when fighting a Hurricane player, and that's why, again, if you are mobile, you can use your defense mechanisms to hide and use your shield correctly and everything, and melt those shields down, you're going to be pretty good in a pretty good position. So I have it specifically more of an A- B+. All right, now looking at our next mech specifically is Aquila. Now I'm going to put Aquila and Narukami in the exact same boat. They're both snipers. They're going to both be really far away. They're not going to be really close to a Hurricane player. I won't see a Hurricane player really going after a Narukami or Aquila, because they're going to be really far, or correction, they should be really far. So keeping that distance, because you're really far as a sniper, really helps your survivability in a sense. So that will help you. And when it comes to what you're doing, is just pretty much sniping. Now the amount of damage you can do as a sniper, yes, it varies. Technically Narukami fully charged can do a lot more damage than Aquila. But overall, I find that their kits are very similar in this sense, because their snipers are really far. But when it comes to both Aquila and Narukami, I have them both at an A tier. Is that correct? A or A+. The reason why I have it is, again, Hurricane, I can't see them going after those players specifically, so it makes it really tough if they're really far away. So that already helps them already. But the amount of damage that it can do, if a Hurricane player is behind a decoy drone, the sniper can actually snipe through it, and actually the Hurricane player can take some damage to it as well, because they're sniping right through and it passes through, just like Stellaris sword. So the damage you can do specifically can actually hurt a player. So that also plays a factor into it if they happen to be right behind it. Also, when it comes to Aquila specifically, Aquila's starting ability to hit multiple targets makes it easier for you to hit the decoy drones and still hit the Hurricane player as well. So when it comes to that scenario, I find that both Aquila is really good. It can still hit the targets if they need to with that third ability. But also Narukami does pretty solid job. with the survivability, keeps it a little bit higher because you're invisible. It's gonna be really tough. Yeah, I can see your decoy drones, but they expanded the range of that, so you can really be really far away from that decoy drone and still be invisible, and you're doing a lot of damage. So I find that when it comes to that scenario specifically, both snipers are very similar. They're gonna be really far. They can both snipe through the decoy drone, and the Hurricane player can take damage. So in that scenario, I have them both at a A to A+. All right, now the next mech we're going to be looking at is SkyRaider. Now, we found out when it comes to Hurricane specifically, now keep in mind, Hurricane and Inferno are very similar. They're just, one is a defender and then one is the attacker. Now, they're supposed to be the energy versions of Stego and Tricera, okay? So, with that being said, we noticed that, yes, your drones are supposed to counter a lot of missiles, and they're supposed to attack it. And even with your focus emitter, is supposed to destroy it. Now, what we found specifically, and it could be a bug, what we found specifically when it comes to SkyRaider, SkyRaider's missiles, when it comes to a Hurricane as a defender, it doesn't work the same for some reason as Inferno. Now, I'm going to have some B-rolls, and hopefully have some B-rolls so you guys can see it. But we're going to see that Hurricane is not destroying any missiles and is taking a lot of missiles, okay? Is not, you're supposed to be getting like these red exclamation marks that actually shows indications that you're able to, that is going to be destroyed, that there are missiles that can be targeted. Both the drone that does damage is not destroying it, and on top of it, your focus emitter is also not destroying it as well. I'm not sure why it's not doing it, and the reason why I was able to test this is because we just came off fresh from playing Inferno, and we know what Inferno kit is supposed to be like. Inferno is very similar to Hurricane in a little bit. It has a focus emitters, it can destroy a lot of missiles, and while playing Inferno, we tested this live, like, oh, hold up, let's stop Hurricane, let's go back to Inferno for 1 second, and we noticed that the exclamation mark was popping up for Inferno for both SkyRaider and Falcon, but it was not popping up for Hurricane. Now, when I did Hurricane against SkyRaider and Falcon, there were some missiles that I was able to destroy as a Falcon player. But when it comes to SkyRaider specifically, both the one missile going down and then blowing up in multiple missiles, as an Inferno, I'm able to hit even those multiple missiles that clusters that comes out of there. But as a Hurricane, I could not stop that, unfortunately. And my decoy drone, not my DB, my drones were not attacking them either. So I'm not too sure if it's a bug that specifically SkyRaider's missiles are not being able to get targeted. That was just something I found out when we were testing it, and I'm like wondering why SkyRaider was definitely doing a lot more damage because it is a medium flyer, but a lot of the missiles were coming through where Falcon has a lot of missiles and they were not coming through. So that's just something I, just to let you guys know. I'm not sure if it's a bug. Maybe you guys want to let people know, hey, this Hurricane thing is happening when a SkyRaider is using these missiles. And we tested this multiple times and we got the same results. Now, with that being said, between Falcon and also SkyRaider, I have SkyRaider as a higher rank. I have SkyRaider more of a B+. I think SkyRaider is more of a nuisance. It can definitely destroy a lot of the shields that Hurricane can have between the EMP pulsing that it does from that one right-click missile. On top of the weapon you can charge up as well. On top of that, all your missiles and everything like that can easily destroy my shields. This takes away a lot of my kits, unfortunately. And unfortunately, because I cannot stop your missiles, I put SkyRaider a lot higher than Falcon. Now, when it comes to Falcon specifically, I find that, yes, I'm able to destroy some of the missiles. So that, yes, my regular drones plus my focus emitter is taking away some of those missiles. So I'm taking a little bit less damage when it comes to it. And I find that the damage that specifically SkyRaider can do because of that potential bug, I think is a bug, because of that, and that the amount of damage that it can do from the pulsating missiles and everything else that it does, can really eat away to my shields, where Falcon, if I can't stop your missiles, then yes, you're going to eat away a lot of my shields, but I also find that I can also stop a lot of your missiles, which is why I specifically have it just shy under SkyRaider due to that specific thing. Now, I do find that in this scenario, that if they're both in the same scenario where I can stop both of their missiles, I still would put SkyRaider a little bit higher, specifically because you can disrupt more of my plays. You're going to be able to put things on the floor. You're going to stop me from, getting on a point. You're going to stop me from, versus a missile being barraged to me, you're going to be able to put an EMP out there. You're going to be able to put these blue missiles to jam my screen up. So that also plays a factor into why I put SkyRaider a little bit higher, specifically to a Hurricane player. But Falcon can still do a really good job. You just have to keep in mind, when it comes to Falcon playing versus a Hurricane player, they can destroy their missiles, so keep that in mind. You might want to bait out your missiles, so you can try to see if you can use your light missiles so that they use their focus emitter and everything, and when you are ready, you can use your heavy missiles, not worrying about, because they already use their third ability. So you can try to use your missiles to kind of bait them a little bit when it comes to that scenario. Obviously, if you're doing your loop-de-loops and your downward spirals, you can't be locked on to there. It might take you some time before you actually destroy a Hurricane player, so that is why the damage is a little bit lower, due to you can't be locked on because you're doing your tricks. I find that your survivability is pretty good, as long as you don't touch the ground and you're stuck because you have no energy. But I find, like I said, I give the notch over to SkyRaider versus Falcon, but overall can still be pretty good when it comes to a defender, because they're not going to be moving a lot. Just like Tricera, they're going to be a little bit sluggish versus other mechs specifically. So I do find that you can still do a really good job at disrupting the entire team, plus also a Hurricane player as well. All right, I'm going to make a quick little edit here. I totally forgot to do a recording for Alysnes here. Alysnes specifically countering Hurricane, I give a B+. What Alysnes can do specifically with the weapons that it has some missiles. It also has the gun. It could do pretty solid damage to the decoy drone and also the main shield for Hurricane, which then leaves the drones that it can use to attack, and then the main attack. So I feel like overall you could easily get rid of the shields versus where the other brawlers wouldn't be able to, due to this character is a medium striker. So getting rid of half of Hurricane's kit, because you can easily destroy it, makes it really solid, and then you can then switch over to melee and then go in on the Hurricane player. So I find that it's easy to do damage. On top of that, I also find that you could survive. You have to be very careful. You could purge your armor, come back to life, purge your armor again, and then that is it. So there is a limit to it. So depending on how late in the fight you are, if you happen to fight Hurricane when you already purged and your purge is still on cooldown, then that also plays a factor into everything. So overall, I think Alysnes is probably more of a B+. Definitely want to give it a plus specifically. It's slightly better than Stellaris specifically from range, and it can also do melee as well. The range that it can do to be able to get rid of that decoy drone before you get to Hurricane to really close in that gap can be really solid. So I give Alysnes a B+. Now, we didn't go over Hurricane specifically is because I find that when it comes to a mech, the exact same mech on the other team, it becomes what player is better. Okay, what player in that scenario is better? And we also didn't go over Inferno, because we've tested Inferno and Hurricane, and they are pretty much almost very similar. I can survive a lot of Inferno's damage. On top of that, as a Hurricane player, I can survive a lot of the damage that Inferno can do. And then Inferno, because you are moving around, you can do a lot of damage, but I am being able to protect myself between all my shields, so it becomes more of a who's a better mech. So when it comes to Hurricane and Inferno, we didn't give them a ranking. I would probably put them more of a B. It depends on how each pilot is specifically. I think there's times where I've been Inferno and I've been taking out Hurricane players, and that's vice versa to me as well when a Hurricane taking me out. So And when it comes to those two specific mechs, I know people might have said you haven't talked about those. Those two are very similar. Their survivability is very high if they're going against each other. Like I said, Hurricane versus Inferno. One can survive while the other one's doing a lot of damage. And then it's all about who can tire each other out. So I find that it really depends on the mech specifically and the person who's piloting that mech specifically. But that is my personal thoughts on why I didn't rank those two. But if I was, it's more of a B when it comes to it. When it comes to Inferno, the decoy drones that it can do, the decoy drones. The Hurricane player has decoy drones, and the Inferno player with that focus emitter, because that focus emitter can hit multiple targets, can still attack a Hurricane player. So, like I said, you can still do a lot of protection to protect yourself, and we've had times after time after time in a 1v1 where I find that it just depends on who's a better mech specifically. But that is my personal thoughts. I think Serenith is super duper solid. I think Welkin and Panther, with that up close in person, jumping up and slamming down, you can, for one split second, be able to lock onto a Hurricane player, even though they're next to the decoy drone. So with that being said, you're going to see a lot of brawlers probably do that trick. And if they haven't already specifically, because when we found out that you can still do it, it's crazy. So if you're near the decoy drone, they can jump up, they can lock onto you for one split second, and makes melee still very valid. But you just gotta be careful, because if you are near the decoy drone, you might accidentally attack that decoy drone, and then you are stunned for a second. Now, yes, they can keep activating it, but just the fact that you can stun them, a Hurricane player, and get that close in person, I find that even brawlers can still be really good if they know what they're doing specifically when it comes to it. But yeah, when it comes to those are my picks specifically. I find that there are a lot of mechs out there, like the tank, the Dino brothers are really solid. Now we're going to be seeing 2 new mechs coming out very soon, and I'm going to be trying to grind out a lot of content for them. So we're going to be doing beginner's guide for that. So if you're interested, we do beginner guides for our mechs. I have a few already out there, so if you want to see it, our Stellaris is doing really good. Falcon's done really good. Panther's done really good. So if you want to see videos of that, you can definitely take a look at our beginner's guide specifically. But we will be doing beginner guides for them. But like I mentioned before, we will be doing Tricera next. Tricera will be our next mech that we will be doing. That was voted as our next mechs to be looking at. People want to see how to counter Tricera. Even though Tricera took a nerf a little bit, they still want to see Tricera. So we will be looking at doing Tricera next. So if you want to be part of the lab testing and get a special shout out like Haunted and also Demon, you can also be part of the squad and help us out. Now, those who are chatting can also get a shout out as well. So those who are in chat, who helped us out last week when it comes to this video, I appreciate you guys. You guys are amazing. But that's pretty much it. I catch you guys in another video. Peace.